So I thought I would try this whole draw my story shindig out, as there have been a few questions regarding how I actually ended up on a random ship in Africa. So, here we go. Let's start at the very beginning. My parents met aboard the MV Anastasis, which was a retired Italian passenger cargo vessel that was built in the 1950s and transformed into a Mercy ship in 1978. When my mom was 7 months pregnant with me, she returned to Washington to have me, as we don't have any obstetricians aboard. And once I was 2 months old and just old enough to prop my head up for that passport picture, we returned to my first West African country of Ghana. And I would live aboard the Anastasis with my family for the next 12 years. So my dad was and is a maxillofacial surgeon, my mom was the director of training, and my little brother Wesley joined us in 1998.
So I absolutely loved my childhood. I loved living within 2 minutes of my friends. I loved traveling the world. The Anastasis used to sail to a new country every 3 months or so. But then 2006 rolled around, and that is the year I like to call the year of the flood, both because we had a literal flood in our cabin, which was a great time, but also just because there was a lot of crazy things happening that year. I remember having to give away my beloved pet turtle Chomper because she had outgrown our tiny aquarium in our cabin, so that was really sad for me. And I also had tick fever and malaria at the same time. So talk about double fun. It's great.
We also found out that the Anastasis was going to be decommissioned and scrapped, and we would be transferring to the new ship, the Africa Mercy. And so as an 11, 12-year-old, I was basically leaving the only home I had ever known and saying goodbye to a community of people I had grown up with. So I remember that was a pretty hard year for me.
So it was not until my arrival on the Africa Mercy that I felt a distinct desire to be involved in our organization. I didn't just want to play and live my life separate from the hospital anymore on Deck 6. I wanted to be a part of this ministry and everything that was going on. So with my mom's help, I began visiting the patients in my dad's Max Fax ward regularly, often every night. And this is how I met my friend Blessing. Blessing was only 8 years old when she fell into a ditch on her way to school, and she contracted the flesh-eating disease called Noma. And so within a matter of days, Noma had begun to eat away at her lips, and though Noma can be cured by simple penicillin, her mom had spent everything that she had on penicillin that turned out to be fake sugar pills. So Blessing unfortunately lost her lips entirely and came to the ship when we were in Monrovia, Liberia. I was inspired by Blessing's mother, Martha's Job-like faith, as she watched her daughter go through a trauma most could never even comprehend. And so as I was sitting down there with Blessing, doing simple things like making bracelets or painting rocks even, I was learning some of the most profound lessons of my life in the simplicity. There was not a night where there was not a song of thanksgiving and praise on Martha's lips. And even though she wept with her daughter and it hurt her heart to see the trauma Blessing was going through, she always remained steadfast in her faith. And that really changed how I viewed the world.
So as I continued to visit the wards and meet patient after patient who became my friend after friend, I realized that though I had originally gone down to give, I ended up receiving much more than I ever could have given. And I learned a lot about what persisting through suffering looks like. And I realized that joy is not simply a state of being, but it's an active choice that we can make every day and that the patients in the ward choose to make every day.
So anyways, graduation came all too quickly, and I graduated in a huge class of 3 people. There are my fellow graduates, drawn so amazingly, Laura and Michelle. And then came the time to make the big decision of what was my life going to look like off the ship for the first time ever. So during my first 18 years, I traveled recurringly to the following countries: Ghana, Spain, the Netherlands, Denmark, Switzerland, the UK, South Africa, Germany, France, Togo, Madagascar, Benin, Belgium, Guinea, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Gibraltar, Liberia, Canada, Italy, Vatican City, the Canary Islands, Jordan, Switzerland, Monaco, and Israel. I spent several summers in Israel studying courses like biblical peacemaking, geographic and historical settings of the Bible, Jesus and his times, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And it was a time, as my professor says, where the Bible doesn't come alive to you, but you become alive to the Bible. And I really felt that, and this is where I started to become first interested in studying theology, which would later play a role in my life, as you will see. All right, but back to graduation. After I left the ship, I moved to Spokane, Washington, where I attended Whitworth for the last 4 years. So it was definitely a time of great change for me. There was suddenly grass and trees and snow everywhere and hundreds of kids my age instead of like 3. And I got my first phone, went to my first basketball game, learned a ton of cultural things I didn't know. Like, I didn't know what clubbing meant. I thought that meant hitting something with an actual club, so had to Google that one. I was that kid that was Googling what clubbing meant.
So my freshman year was actually quite a stormy year. I felt like it was my Jonah in the belly of the whale kind of experience, and that was actually a story I read quite a lot during that time because I just felt like I was trapped in this dark place that I didn't want to be in, and I was homesick and in culture shock and just felt like I didn't fit in.
So it was during this time of personal suffering and homesickness where I realized I needed to make an important choice. Either I could take a deistic view of God. God is not near. He is not here when I need him most, and he just doesn't care about me. Or God is near, and he is here, and he remains good even when my situations seem the opposite. He is still there. Now, I didn't make the right decision right away. I instead tried to cram the lonely spaces in my heart with an addiction to Netflix. I had never had Netflix before, and it was the perfect mind-numbing activity I needed to keep my mind off of my true pain and loneliness. And so I just started watching it non-stop. But eventually I realized that it had become like a golden idol, a golden calf, if you will. And the thing about the golden calf doesn't get you out of the desert. Only God can get you out of the desert. And so finally I turned to him, and I experienced God's presence in a way that I had never experienced it before. And I realized and learned the beautiful lesson of how it's in the darkest of our times when God's light can shine the brightest. And it's when we feel farthest that God is actually closest. God never abandons us. He's always there. The question is, are we going to show up to him? And I finally decided it's time to show up to the God who has been there all along. I think it was also a time for me to finally live out what I had been observing in the lives of our patients on the ship for all of those years. For so long, I had been comfortable sitting next to people while they experienced their own pain. You know, I was comfortable ministering to them and empathizing and holding their hand as they went through really tough times, but I had never experienced my own pain. And I think I felt almost ashamed because I thought, oh, my issues are nothing compared to what they're going through back on the ship. But C.S. Lewis puts it this way. He says it's easier to say your tooth is aching than your heart is breaking. And I realized I was too ashamed and embarrassed to let people know my heart was breaking. But in doing so, and in being honest and vulnerable, and finally being myself rather than just trying to act like everything was fine and trying to just fit in to the American culture and be someone I wasn't, when I finally accepted who I was, what I was going through, and where I was at, that's when everything changed, and that's when I finally made all of the friends I had always wanted so desperately. And the rest of my Whitworth experience was quite the opposite from my freshman year. It's so funny how a place that I wanted nothing more than to leave, a place that could never be my home freshman year, became the home I would have done anything to stay at by my senior year. I made some of my dearest friends while I was at Whitworth. My best friend, actually from the African Mercy, who went through high school with me, came and joined me my sophomore year at Whitworth. Hannah, that's Hannah right there. And my brother even came when I was a senior, so we overlapped for a year, so that was amazing. And then 2 of my friends, Vanessa and Benjamin, are actually coming to work on the ship this January. So bringing Whitworth to the ship, and I'm super excited about that.
I also just realized I haven't talked at all about what I did at college. So I majored in theology and minored in psychology. I took some biblical language classes, Hebrew and Greek. I was a resident assistant and a cultural diversity advocate during my time there. I also was a member of our campus improv club, Cool Whip, and I was also a part of our campus dance ministry club, Jubilation, which was an amazing time because I've always wanted to be involved in dancing but hadn't really had the chance growing up on the ship. So that was a really fun thing to be a part of.
I traveled to Great Britain my sophomore year to take a class called The History of Christianity in Great Britain, hence why I traveled to Great Britain. And then I also got to visit the ship during Christmas while it was in Congo and Madagascar. And then my senior year, I took a class called The Meaning of Life in New York City. So super light and easy topic. So that pretty much brings us up to date. I graduated with the class of 2017 this last spring and then moved here to the Africa Mercy to do a year's internship with the chaplaincy department. And when it comes to the future, I'm not entirely sure, but I know I want to go to graduate school and either pursue theology, psychology, or both. And so we will see what next year brings and where it will take me. But for now, I am just enjoying living on my favorite ship in the world with some incredible people and watching lives be transformed each and every day. So that's it for this time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.